Hi everyone, welcome to Words of Wisdom. If anyone has been in a relationship where it ended abruptly, for no reason, all you did was love them, care for them, and be there for them, this is for you. This is titled, Peace Scared Them. Let me start by saying this clearly, because a lot of people blame themselves for this part. Most real connections don't end because something bad happened. They end because something real started happening and someone wasn't ready for it. When a connection begins to deepen, when it moves out of the surface level chemistry and into something steady, something honest, something that actually asks you to show up, that's when people reveal who they really are. And that's when fear enters the room. Not loud fear, quiet fear. The kind that looks like hesitation. The kind that sounds like, I just need some space. Or, I'm not sure what I want right now. Or, let's slow this down. And by the way, slowing down isn't always wrong, okay? But sometimes it's not about pacing. Sometimes it's about panic. Because when someone isn't used to a healthy connection, peace does not feel peaceful. It feels unfamiliar, and unfamiliar feels unsafe to them. You showed up constantly. You showed up consistently. You were the same person on Monday that you were on Friday. You didn't disappear to create interest. You didn't make them guess where they stood. You didn't play emotional chess. And for people who grew up around inconsistency, that kind of presence doesn't feel comforting. It feels suspicious to them. Let me say this plainly. People who are used to chaos will question calm. People who are used to fake effort will distrust genuine care. People who are used to survival will misinterpret stability as boredom. So when the connection deepens, they didn't lean in. They lean out or they run, right? They started thinking ahead instead of staying present. They imagined endings instead of building something. They ask themselves, what if this goes wrong? Instead of, what if this goes right? And here's the first sign you can notice early. When someone starts pulling back emotionally right after things feel good, not after conflict, that's important. Not after a fight, not after a problem, right after closeness, right after vulnerability, right after peace. This is not coincidence. That's fear. Now, while that internal pulling back is happening, something else usually starts happening too. Outside interference. Because real connections don't just affect the two people in them. They affect everyone around them. Friends who are used to constant access feel threatened. Family members who never healed project their wounds. People who benefit from being available, agreeable, or unchanged don't like it when you start forming something solid. And they don't always come in aggressively. They come in casually. Okay? Examples. I don't know. Something about them feels off. Or just be careful. Or are you sure this isn't moving too fast? Okay? I just don't want to see you get hurt. And here's the second sign to watch for. When someone suddenly needs a lot of outside opinions about your relationship. If every concern requires a group discussion, the relationship is not being protected. Healthy connections are built between two people, not managed by a committee. And if your partner or you start letting outside voices carry more weight than the actual experience you're having together, that's when doubt sneaks in, where it doesn't even belong. At first, It feels small, a comment here, a question there. But slowly, the energy changes. You start explaining yourself more. You start justifying normal behavior. You start shrinking your needs so things don't feel complicated. And here's another sign people miss. When you feel like you're working harder to maintain peace than to build connection. Love should not feel like a performance review. You shouldn't feel like you're being evaluated for being yourself. If you notice that you're constantly adjusting your tone, your honesty, your expectations, just to keep things smooth, pay attention. That's not compromise. That's erosion. And eventually, one of two things happens. Either you pull back to protect yourself, or the situation will force distance. And distance tells the truth without being dramatic or loud. Once you're no longer there, once your consistency, your care, your grounding presence is removed, the contrast becomes obvious. Suddenly, everything else feels shallow. Conversations lack depth. Support feels conditional. The people who had opinions don't actually show up when it matters. That's when the realization hits the other person. Okay? What I had wasn't common. That's what they're going to think. But by then, you're already gone. And I want to be very clear about this part because people romanticize waiting. Okay? Let me say that again. Sorry. I want to be very clear about this part because people romanticize waiting. You are not meant to stay in a situation long enough for someone else to realize your value at the expense of your peace. Sometimes stepping away isn't quitting. Sometimes it's clarity. And moving forward, this is what changes. You stop oversharing early. Sacred things get privacy. You watch how someone handles calm, not excitement, not drama, but calm. You notice who they turn to when things get quiet. You trust the moment you start feeling smaller. That feeling is information. Here's one more sign to remember. If your presence brings peace, but their life thrives on noise, there will always be friction. That doesn't make either of you bad. It just means you're operating on different frequencies. Okay? Some people only recognize steadiness after they lose it. That doesn't mean it wasn't real. It means they didn't know how to hold it. They didn't know how to deal with it. And that's not a failure. That's discernment. You don't leave with bitterness. You leave with understanding. And you move forward knowing this. Real connections don't require you to disappear to be appreciated. They don't require constant reassurance. They don't require outside validation to survive. When something is right, it protects itself. And when it doesn't, when you're the only one protecting it, that's your sign. Okay? Okay, you guys, I have got to go to bed. I am exhausted. All right? If this message put words to something you've lived through, if it helped you, stop blaming yourself for someone else's fear. Or if it reminded you that calm is not boring, consistency is not weakness, and peace is not something you have to earn, then this wasn't just content. It was confirmation. And chances are, someone you care about needs to hear this too. Someone who's questioning their worth, shrinking themselves to keep the peace, or wondering why being genuine costs them a connection. So if this resonated, like the episode, share it with someone who needs clarity, and subscribe to the podcast and channel so you don't miss conversations like this. because this space is for real ones, the ones who value depth over drama, truth over illusion, and connections that don't require you to disappear to be loved. You're not asking for too much. You are just offering it to someone who didn't know how to hold it. I love you, take care, and God bless.